Welcome to a special presentation of Protecting History, where we feature buildings on the National Register list of historic places. I'm your host, Sabrina Jordan. On the show, we'll have a very special guest from Historic Milwaukee Incorporated. Now, the National Register list doesn't just include buildings, but also includes districts, sites, and structures that have been deemed worthy of preservation. In 1966, the National Register list was established through the National Historic Preservation Act, and 30,000 properties are added each year. Most of the properties on the National Register list are symbolic and significant in their own way. The first building that we'll be featuring on the show is a building most of you have seen or drove past. This building has been home to many concerts and even some TV shows. Katarina Hren tells us more about the historic Turner Hall.
In Turner Hall, we have several different groups. We have 4th Street Forum that's filmed in our Guestern Hall. We also have the Historic Ballroom that's operated by the Pabst Theater, and we have lots of concerts and storytelling and various community events that are held in our ballroom now. We also have our gym, which is underneath the building, which includes rock climbing, gymnastics, recreational gymnastics, and fencing, as well as capoeira and yoga. And then we also have a restaurant space, which is going to be under construction for the next few months, and we will have a new restaurant in the new year. The Turners who came to Milwaukee and established this building were actually very radical. They were interested in establishing a place where the ideal citizen could go and train his body in the gym, doing a variety of exercises, as well as coming up to the upper levels and chatting about everything under the sun. Turner Hall in Milwaukee is not the only Turner Hall. There are Turner Halls throughout the U.S. There's one, for example, in St. Louis called the Athenaeum. There is one in Watertown. I believe there's one in Cleveland, Los Angeles, New York. So they're throughout the U.S. A lot of people come to our ballroom and they're surprised at the fact that it's not completely renovated to look like it did back in the day. But anybody who's been to Europe can tell you that there are a lot of buildings that show their history, and that's why our ballroom is unique, because it looks really modern, but at the same time you can tell it has a long history, that things happened. Well, some things that I think are unique about Turner Hall are the fact that a TV show is taped live, as well as the fact that we can feature a variety of music from all across the country and locally. We have rock climbing. I think we're the only rock climbing event downtown. In our gym, we've actually had a band play. We have had a hooping event. We've had NIA. It's been also another place that's been a community resource for having events that promote physical activities that are fun. We want to get people into physical activities as a life habit. Turner actually means to do gymnastics, and so they had rigorous exercises that they did. Turner Hall is unique because it's not only a national historical landmark, but it's also a local landmark as well as a state landmark, and I believe there are only 2 other buildings that have that distinction.
Wow, what an amazing building. Joining me now is my guest, Anna Marie Opkenorf from Historic Milwaukee Incorporated. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Working at Historic Milwaukee Incorporated must be very interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about the organization?
Sure, it's very interesting. It's a lot of fun. Historic Milwaukee has been serving the community for about 40 years. Our mission is to increase awareness of and commitment to Milwaukee's history, our architecture, and the preservation of our built environment through education and advocacy. So not only do we share the historical narratives of our city, we also are informing and raising awareness of the environmental, economic, social, and cultural improvements that preservation provides to the community.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
Our next building is Protecting History. On Protecting History is very unique and different from all the other buildings featured on the show. You might have even stayed there once, Anna. Peter Northern gives us an exciting look at the Knickerbocker Hotel.
The Knickerbocker is located, as I said, on the east side of Milwaukee at 1028 East Juneau, right across the street from our beautiful lakefront and just slightly north of the Art Museum and the War Memorial. Knickerbocker has approximately 180 units on 8 floors. In addition to that, we also have 2 full-service restaurants, a full-service salon and spa, as well as a small tailor shop and some other commercial space. Knickerbocker was established in 1929. That's when construction actually started. It took about 2 years to build the facility. And once it was completed in early 1931, it was occupied mainly by residents. Knickerbocker does have 2 restaurants on site. We have the Nick Restaurant, which is more of a casual dining restaurant. It is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. And then it also is open for Sunday brunch on Saturday and Sunday starting at 10 a.m. We also have the Osteria, which was Zagat rated recently as one of the top 25 restaurant hotels in the United States. It is open 6 nights a week and open for dinner only, and it is fine Italian cuisine. Knickerbocker is considered a hotel, condominium hotel, so all the units are privately owned. Many of those units are privately owned and they're occupied by the residents, so we have about 1/3 of our units that are owned and occupied by the people. The other percentage, some of those are owned and privately rented, more as an apartment type situation. And about half of our units are owned, but they are in what we call our hotel pool. So about 85 units currently are rented out as hotel rooms. Those rooms would range in size from 320 square feet to over 2,000 square feet. So from a small efficiency size room to 2 or 3 bedroom hotel suite. The Knickerbocker was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in June of 1988. There obviously have been a lot of people that have lived here. There are a lot of stories that go around about possible ghosts that haunt the Knickerbocker because, as you can imagine, this has a very storied history. It was an integral part of Milwaukee's high society, especially when it first opened. It was one of the premier properties in the Milwaukee area, located down on Yankee Hill by the lake. I personally have not seen any ghosts at the Knickerbocker, but we do have a few residents who do believe that ghosts do inhabit the facility. There are a few items that make the Knickerbocker unique, and one is obviously the fact that it is on the National Register of Historic Places. In order to be on the Register of Historic Places, we've had to maintain a lot of the original touches that the Knickerbocker was built. Our doors to all of our guest rooms are original, and they're called servadors. They're 2-sided doors that can be opened from within and without. So when the Knickerbocker was first built, the residents would actually open the partial inside of their door and put in their laundry. The staff would then open the partial outside of the servador to take out the laundry. Then it would be taken downstairs, laundered, folded, and put back into the servador where the resident could take it out. So those are a very unique feature, the original feature of the facility. Our terrazzo floors in the lobby area are also original, which we have recently restored within the last 5 years to their original beauty. We have the original chandeliers and lighting in the hallways. So we've tried to maintain a lot of the character of the Knickerbocker while also updating it for the guest amenities that people in this day and age expect. In terms of what the future holds for the Knickerbocker, what we'd like to do is maintain the character of the facility because, as we are on the National Register of Historic Places, that is something that is very important to us. So we want to maintain the character. We love the location. We love the way that our facility fits in on the near east side of Milwaukee, closely located to the Calatrava Art Museum, down by the lakefront. So going forward, we obviously want to continue to improve the facility, but also keep it true to its history and its heritage. That is something that's very important to us.
I didn't know that the Knickerbocker had 2 restaurants, a salon, and a spa. We learned briefly about the architecture of the Knickerbocker. Could you expand and tell us more about the Knickerbocker's rich architecture?
Sure. The Knickerbocker was built in 1929, And it's a U-shaped building. They often did that in the early part of the 20th century, late 19th century, to let more light in to the rooms within the building. It is a classical revival style, and you can know that by looking at the buff terracotta, which embellishes the outside of the building. The 8th floor, you'll see arcades and colonnades, as well as embellishments on the 1st floor of the building. It was built in what was called a fireproof construction, which means it was concrete and steel, and it's faced with brown brick, and again, the buff terracotta. And actually, an interesting note, when it was first constructed, they had a rooftop dining garden as well as putting green on the top of the hotel apartments.
Extraordinary. Wow. Sounds like a wonderful building.
It's a really nice building. We're lucky to have it.
Many people in West Dallas know of this building, and some go there on a weekly basis. But what some people might not know is that it's on the National Register of Historic Places.
The West Dallas Post Office was built in 1939. It was one of the Works Projects administration things that President Roosevelt had in regards to get the economic recovery going. The post office was first built in 1939 as part of the Works Project under the WPA from President Roosevelt. And part of that was to stimulate the economy and put people to work. So he had federal buildings built, roads, infrastructure. A lot of our parks benefited from that also. We actually have a photograph of what I believe is the first workforce that worked out of this facility. As you can tell, their uniforms have changed compared to what they're wearing today, as everybody's dress has changed. The reason I believe that the West Dallas Post Office is on the National Register has to do with the time that it was built, and also with the murals that are in our lobby and our box section. Both make it a very distinct building. There's very few facilities within this area that are actually built during that period of time and benefited both through the WPA. In terms of size, this would be a medium-sized office serving mostly the 53214 zip code. There are much larger offices. The branch that serves the Wauwatosa area, the Tosa office, is the largest branch at this time, along with the one on 43rd and Lincoln, which is West Milwaukee. Those are the two largest offices within the Milwaukee area. In 2001, the West Dallas Post Office was added to the National Register of Historic Sites. But the year prior, in the fall of 2000, there were 10 other sites that were also added. I believe what it is they had to reach a certain lifespan before they could be looked at for being added to the historic sites. The two paintings in the lobby are Wisconsin wildflowers in spring and Wisconsin wildflowers in autumn. Those were commissioned in 1943, and the artist was Francis Foy. The post office murals were actually executed by the artist working for a section of fine arts, commonly known as the section. It was established in 1934 and administered by the Procurement Division of the Treasury Department. This was headed by Edward Bruce, a former lawyer, businessman, and artist. The section's main function was to select art of high quality to decorate public buildings if the funding was available. By providing decorations in public buildings, the art was made accessible to all people. West Dallas actually is served by 3 different offices, one being Root River, which has the far southwest area, what we call West Milwaukee, which is located on 43rd and Lincoln, which has the southeastern portion, and then the West Dallas office, which has the majority of the city of West Dallas. I believe the distinction between the West Dallas and other post offices is the time it was built was almost comparative to what we're going through now through an economic recovery. And one of President Roosevelt's things was a Works Project, and this was one of the facilities that actually fell under that and was built. I think the other thing would be the murals in the lobby, which make it distinct, and just the architecture itself.
Those paintings were beautiful, and I believe that's the only post office with paintings from when it was established. When a building is placed on the National Register list, it doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to stay on the list forever. For example, the buildings on the corner of Milwaukee and Wisconsin Avenue are being torn down to make way for the new Marriott Hotel. Anna, can you elaborate more on the impact of downtown historic that it's going to have on the downtown historic district?
Yes, certainly. They're going to be demolishing 5 nationally and locally registered historic buildings. Those buildings are located within the East Side Commercial Historic District. When it's on the National Register, it does not necessarily protect a building from demolition. But when it is on the local register, that means any alterations made to the external part of the building must receive a certificate of appropriateness from Milwaukee's Historic Preservation Commission. And what they do is they judge the appropriateness of the alteration based on our Historic Preservation Ordinance. Those 5 buildings that are being demolished are part of the last remaining fully 19th century historic building block in Milwaukee. So it's a dramatic change for that area of town, and it really has a negative impact on the continuity of a district. That's why districts are listed, because there is a certain historic continuity that increases the economic, cultural value of that area.
The last building on our Protecting History is a place that we're all familiar with and at one time was the tallest building in the world. Garth Barzan gives us an in-depth look at Milwaukee City Hall.
The mayor of Milwaukee and our 15 aldermen all reside in this building during their normal business hours. The structure itself consisted of a look known as German Flemish Renaissance. The building was also built, as some people may know, on pilings. And being the fact that the downtown Milwaukee area was very swampy, it needed wooden pilings put into the ground for stability so that the building would not sink into what was called the Tamarack Swamp. The building is 393 feet from the sidewalk to the top of the flagpole that sits atop of the City Hall bell tower spire. And that's the equivalent of about 22 stories. The City Hall bell itself is 11.5 tons, and it's composed of 77% Lake Superior copper and 23% East India tin. And George G. Campbell manufactured the bell at his foundry on Oregon Street and delivered it on November 26th of 1896 at a cost nearing $4,000. The Common Council approved several resolutions to increase the size of the bell from 7 tons to 20 tons. The architect and engineer stated that the tower could support a 40-ton bell. Although the council agreed to a 16.5-ton bell, which would have been the largest in the country, the depression of the 1890s had depleted cash reserves and they contracted for a 10-ton bell. At the time, its final weight of 11.5 tons weighed in as the 3rd largest bell in the United States. I can tell you, well, we have 8 floors, 9 if you include the basement. 8 of those 9 floors are currently occupied. As I said earlier, the 8th floor has been vacant for 5 years because of the restoration, and we were looking at possibly remodeling that floor prior to anybody moving back into it. The city treasury on the 1st floor is where the city hall or city taxpayers usually flock at the end of every month, and especially towards the end of the year, to pay their property taxes. Yeah, the Common Council chamber itself is where the aldermen convene for a meeting, usually once a month, and this particular chamber here, I do believe it is the single largest Common Council chamber in the United States, compared to any other cities with their city hall. Most of the painting and the woodwork in here is original. In the chambers itself, though, if you look to the east and the west side, there used to be open balconies where they're now walled off. So, and all the meetings are open to the public. There is seating on either side, on the east and west side, for anybody that wants to sit in. Otherwise, these are also broadcast via cable television. What I think makes the building itself unique is the fact that, as I stated earlier, you can't build something like this now with fire codes, handicap access needed, things things of that nature, because of the fact that it is very geometrically unique. And as much as it may be pleasing to the eye, I know that as a people that we've kind of graduated to looking for more modern conveniences when we're entering a building. And we try and conform with that, but yet at the same time, if a building is historically protected, you can only do so much. I believe that there were several different designs of City Hall that were submitted before the one by Henry Koch was finally accepted. And naturally that had to go through all Common Council proceedings in order to get the funding and to begin the building and to see who, with the winning design, what they thought would be the most serviceable for their needs back in the 1890s. Milwaukee City Hall was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1995 because that was the 100-year anniversary of the opening of City Hall, and the city had decided to do a rededication of the building at that time.
So Anna, we've covered a lot of the historic buildings in the city, and which one would you say is your favorite historical building?
Well, for these purposes, I would have to say that my favorite is City Hall, because it truly epitomizes a period in Milwaukee's history, and it's intrinsically connected with our social history as well. Also, the City Hall just won an award from the National Trust of Historic Preservation. So in October, the mayor went down with representatives from the Department of Public Works to accept an award for the restoration that was just completed. And we all know it had scaffolding wrapped around it for a couple of years. And so we're all really proud of City Hall and the investment our community made in this important building to Milwaukee.
Is there anything else you would like to say about the City Hall or any of the other national buildings or
Sure.
historic buildings? I'm sorry.
Well, just to connect some of them, it was mentioned that Henry Cook designed City Hall. He also designed the Pfister Hotel and Turner Hall. So he was obviously a very important architect for the city of Milwaukee.
Okay. Now, Anna, I believe that the Historic Milwaukee Incorporated is having courses in February and March where people can learn about the diverse architectural styles of Milwaukee.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little more on that too?
Sure. Our course comes along only once every other year, and it's 2 months intensive on the social history of Milwaukee as well as Milwaukee's architectural history, how to read the styles of our buildings. So for instance, the first lecture is going to be held at the Milwaukee Art Museum's Lubar Auditorium, as they all are. On this Saturday, February 5th, it will be given by John Gerda on Milwaukee's social history. And then we will be having Anne-Marie Sawkins, who is the curator at the Hagerty Museum of Art at Marquette University, and she'll be giving 3 classes on architectural styles in Milwaukee and a little bit about the background of architectural history in general. So when you walk, you could say, well, why is that arch curved that way, or why was this building built in this way with these materials? You'll have that information to be able to read the environment. And then we'll have Paul Jakubowicz from the City of Milwaukee's Historic Preservation Commission give a talk on preservation in Milwaukee today and the history of preservation in Milwaukee. We'll also have a course on visual literacy, again, how to read the built environment, and we'll be taking a bus tour of Milwaukee. And those who decide to take the full 8-week course can then become an Historic Milwaukee guide, and we pair them up with a mentor from our organization, and they can learn one of the 20 different neighborhood tours that we have, and they could also become a volunteer of the organization in other ways.
Okay. So is there any websites or anything that people can go to find out more on the history of Milwaukee?
Yes. Well, you can start at historicmilwaukee.org. And we have a resources page where they can look for online resources for the history of Milwaukee. And you can also attend any one of our panel discussions or tours. We also give the boat tours to learn more about the history. I highly recommend not only reading for the source of your knowledge, but also exploring the city. Getting out and being part of the environment is very important. We also have a Facebook page, so visit Historic Milwaukee on Facebook. We give a lot of interesting posts regularly on historic buildings in Milwaukee there.
Okay. We hope you enjoyed the special presentation of Protecting History. I'd like to thank my guest Anna from Historic Milwaukee Incorporated, as well as Turner Hall, the Knickerbocker, the West Allis Post Office, and Milwaukee City Hall for letting us feature their buildings on this show. Thank you for watching.